Okay, back to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center as we do every Thursday. Most usual Thursdays, he's been a man traveling the streets. Bob Whitcomb, GoLocal Columnist, is back in studio today after a little vacation and
Are you accusing me of being a streetwalker?
just traveling the streets. Just he's always
Where's
good
the money?
For
It's a
always
cash
good for a
business.
quip. Yes, it is a cash-only business.
Wait till they start using credit cards on the streets. There'll be these little crank.
Well, we
devices.
have giving meters. I mean, not to
Yeah, the
conflate
giving
two.
meters. I mentioned that in my next ramblings columns, and I think it's a nice idea, but in a funny way, an indirect way. I think it'll tend to make people feel more generous, maybe be more generous, be more kinder and gentler, in the words of George H.W. Bush. But I don't think people give very much money. Nor do I think it will help the panhandling situation. The idea is that some of this will go into social service programs. They've got some of the panhandlers off the streets. The problem with that is that probably the majority of the panhandlers have severe mental problems, mental illness problems, drug problems, alcohol, and so on, and very resistant to getting pulled off the street. The other thing, I think in some cases, they might find this the most lucrative thing they can do.
Lucrative in what sense?
Getting money. I mean, why go into a social service program and go off the streets if you're making a lot of money at the corner of Orms and Charleston?
Yes.
Which they seem to do very well. I rent a little office, as you know, over near the Marriott Hotel. I'm looking out the window, usually 1, 2, 3, 4 panhandlers out there. The cars stop, and people seem to be giving them money, unless that's all a big act. You know, kind of like the way if you're working in the service business and expect tips, you put a couple of dollars in first.
To make it look like,
to
yeah.
make it look good, yeah.
Speaking of asking for money.
Yeah, that's
Speaking-
why I'm here.
Speaking of asking for money,
That's why I'm
no.
here. I take all major credit cards.
Talking about the Paw Sox up in their look in Worcester and your
Yeah.
recent ratings on, doesn't look
Doesn't-
like there's much
doesn't
of
look good.
appetite up there either.
I thought it was very interesting that Massachusetts, which is by some accounts the richest state in the union on a per capita basis, or maybe number 2 after Connecticut, or I should say after Fairfield County, Connecticut,
Yes.
since the rest of the state is like Rhode Island. I was thought it very interesting that as a policy, as a practice and a policy, Massachusetts does not give public money to build stadiums, to build professional team stadiums.
Well, maybe that's why they're number one.
Yeah. And yet, they seem to be doing pretty good up there with the Sox, and it's the great, Boston anyway, great sports town. They will help a little bit with infrastructure around it, off ramps around it. There was considerable amount of public infrastructure around Gillette Stadium, a little bit around Fenway when they fixed up Fenway, but I tell you, that was pretty devastating. That made it very clear. The lady up there said, "Gee, that's a great idea. Where's the money?"
Speaking of Fenway, what if Yawkey Way?
Yeah, I don't. I think that's good. Was Yawkey a racist? Maybe. The Red Sox were certainly the last of the major league teams to hire an African American player, but I don't know. I don't want to sound
lot of chatter
like,
right now.
Yeah, a lot of chatter.
A lot of chatter right now.
I think there's a strong argument to be made to moving the statue of Robert E. Lee, abusive slave trader, to a museum. Covering them up seems kind of silly, though. These statues are putting
Shrouds.
Yeah, it's almost like covering up, the Renaissance paintings of nude people, and then the Victorians came along and they did some strategic cover up. I don't know.
It's just all a cover up. But
It's
speaking of
everything.
it's not the crime.
Yeah.
But speaking of Boston, you had an interesting little piece in your column last weekend about the appetite for art in Boston, being a big art buying town, apparently by some recent rankings, and how that could potentially play into the economy here.
It should, because we are part of the broader economy. In a lot of ways, Providence and Boston are really the same kind of macro metro area. And of course, there are a lot of artists around here. The big problem in Rhode Island since the crash of 1929, we have tons of artists around here. It's famous for having working artists, but they can't sell any. It's a very difficult place to sell at a good price. So they have to go to New York. Most of the famous artists around here, they sell their stuff in New York, which is always going to be the biggest art market, maybe followed by LA. But the Boston thing, I think it's a good sign and a reflection of some, of the wealth. It's a sign of the growing wealth of the city, and of the city is becoming more international, more of a cultural center. And the other thing is the growth of this amazing area called SoWa, south of Washington, which is sort of New England's Soho. And there's just tremendous vibrancy there, a number of galleries, and with them have come, more and more buyers because of so much money in Boston now with Fidelity and Putnam and the biotech, now GE. I assume that Jeff Imelt's retirement will become a great patron of the arts.
We shall see.
So we
and you
shall
know who's
see.
got money up there? Partners.
The mob. Partners, that's right.
It's like a word association
Yeah,
game. Who's
yeah,
got the
yeah.
most money? The
You mean
mob.
the hospital chain.
Partners, yeah, the hospital chain,
Tons
which,
of money.
which we had just reported today, seems to be cooling on here in New England.
Yeah.
Is this going to be some fodder for
Maybe
the upcoming column?
It may be, yeah. I wonder if they had all the facts. I don't know. I know there's a lot of anxiety. Part of the sale, the proposed sale, was the sale of Memorial Hospital. And there was a lot of gnashing of teeth up there about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you always write about healthcare, usually about
I do.
healthcare.
That's because I'm always sick.
No, that's because
That's
it's
fine.
one of your many areas
Yeah,
of
yeah,
expertise.
yeah.
What can we expect from your column this weekend?
Well, let me see. I'm going to talk about the electricity rates going up. I don't think it's that big a deal because, as you guys reported, follows a couple of years of lower rates. But it should teach people to find other sources of electricity as time goes by. Diversify. And it should also make New Englanders think about these high prices, these rate hikes have something to do with the lack of generating capacity here, which is a real problem.
Well,
And that's because New England's probably the most NIMBY-ish place in the country. And not just for fossil fuel stuff and nukes and so on. Windmills.
See it happen all the
Yeah,
time.
you see it happen all the time. It's like the old joke about taxes. Don't tax me, don't tax he, tax the man behind the tree. Put the power plant over there someplace.
well, you have choices.
Yeah.
You can
That
you can build
raises the rates.
the quote unquote cheap versions of power. We just saw Brayton power plant close.
Yeah,
we see
right,
all the
right.
we see
Cheap,
all the
yeah.
debate over Barville, or
Yeah.
there are startup costs for renewables,
Sure,
which people have
sure.
been so.
They're becoming better, they're becoming more efficient, but it's still expensive. You have to move in that direction because that's the way the world's going to go.
We're not staying
But
married to
if
fossil fuels.
somebody wants to put up 48 windmills someplace in Coventry, say, there'd be a big rumpus about it. They don't want to let that gas plant open in Burrillville, and I think that's not a bad transitional plant to the future. Gas isn't great, but it's a hell of a lot better than coal or oil.
Well, we still continue to see a lot of opposition to it here. It's still some time that we
Yeah.
will see what happens. So,
Right.
electric rates. What else are you writing
Right,
about?
underwater garages. There was an interesting piece in the Boston Globe about a proposal to put underwater garages in Boston because so much of the development there is along the waterfront. They're already doing this in Amsterdam and a couple of other, I think Copenhagen. Underwater, take advantage, densely populated area, land's very expensive, so put the parking garages underwater.
Is that part of their master plan? We've talked about the master
They're
plan.
talking about that. I think this is sort of a new idea, and I think this would work very well here because at least in downtown Providence, which is a basin at sea level, very compact, very crowded, very tight. Why not do it here?
Why not?
Yeah.
Well, we'll read about all of that
Yeah.
this weekend. Any last things you want to tell folks?
Yeah, a theory I have, perhaps we talked, the giving meters and all that one. The cyber attack, I think there might have been a cyber attack that caused those collisions of the Navy ships. I think that could have been caused by the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians, and the Russians, where they're screwing up with the communications.
Both of the, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
both of the American ships were hit from the side, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
They were
yeah,
not the
yeah.
instigator of,
Right.
and it's a loss of life.
Yeah.
Major
right.
loss of life.
Life, tremendous damage, very important ships. And I think there could have been some kind of cyber attack on one of the other ships that caused the
Made it
collision.
go. I saw today
Yeah.
one thing someone thought maybe, and I'd seen it from a former military member, they talk about sleep deprivation at
Yeah,
sea,
yeah.
human error or technological error. Do you think we'll ever get an answer?
I think we will, yeah,
Okay.
because the record keeping on Navy ships is very good, unless there's fraud or, they're destroying documents, but I don't think so.
But, two of these accidents in recent weeks,
Yeah,
and again, loss
scary.
of young
Both-
American lives.
Both fatal, crowded area, and crowded sea lanes. So I think we'll probably
It's
find
worrisome.
out.
It's very worrisome.
I just hope they look deeply into the cyber attack
I've seen
theory I have.
look forward to reading it in your columns.
Okay,
Bob
great.
Whitcomb, it's
See you
glad to
later,
have you
Kate.
back.
All
We'll
the
see you
best.
next
Thank
week.
you.